Captain Alice sat back in the worn leather chair of the bridge, letting out a quiet sigh as the soft hum of the starship Resolute filled the room. The ship was small, not like the enormous warships the galaxy was used to seeing, but it had something those massive fleets lacked: humans. Humans were unpredictable, bold, and fearless in ways the galaxy could not easily understand. Alice's hands rested on the arms of her chair, her fingers tapping lightly, and her eyes flicked to the sensors. The small red blip had been moving strangely for the last few minutes, and though it seemed harmless, her curiosity was already piqued. She liked to know what was out there, even if it turned out to be nothing. The crew around her were busy in their usual quiet chaos. Lieutenant Tom was adjusting the ship's communications settings, muttering to himself about frequencies and interference. He was a tall man with messy brown hair that refused to stay in place, and his uniform always seemed slightly too big. "Sensors are picking up some movement on the outpost," he said without looking up. Alice raised an eyebrow. "Movement? Or people moving around?" she asked. Tom scratched the back of his neck. "Both maybe. Hard to tell. Whatever it is, it's odd." Alice smiled faintly, leaning forward. Humans had a way of making the ordinary seem extraordinary. On the small outpost below, people were going about their daily lives, watering plants, repairing solar panels, and arguing over trivial matters like what to cook for dinner. To an alien observer, it might have looked strange, almost suspicious. The precise movements, the way humans seemed to coordinate without really thinking, and the casual way they carried themselves all added to an air of mystery that the galaxy could not easily decipher. Far across the stars, on a massive council station orbiting a dead sun, the alien leaders were monitoring the same outpost. They were tall, slender beings with pale blue skin and large eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. Their technology was advanced, able to scan even the smallest actions on distant planets. And yet, when they looked at the humans, they saw chaos. A being carrying a watering can seemed like it was holding a weapon. A human bending to adjust a solar panel looked like a tactical maneuver. Every ordinary action was twisted into something threatening in their sensors and their minds. The council chamber was filled with a low hum of conversation, interspersed with sudden alerts that blinked red across the walls. "What are they doing?" one alien hissed, its voice like a soft chime. Another clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "They are preparing, I think. Preparing for attack." The first shook its head. "But they are so small. They cannot possibly pose a threat." A third, older and taller, leaned forward. "Do not underestimate them," it warned. "The human mind is difficult to read. Even now, they may be planning something we cannot see." Back on the outpost, Alice watched the humans carefully. They were nothing like the aliens expected. There were no uniforms, no strict formations, no disciplined drills. Instead, humans moved freely, helping one another, sometimes arguing loudly, sometimes laughing, sometimes pausing to rest. A young woman, Mia, knelt near a plant bed, carefully adjusting the water flow, while Ben, a technician, walked past carrying tools and humming an old Earth tune. Alice could see the alien sensors misinterpreting every small movement, but she didn't intervene. Part of her wanted to see how far the aliens would panic over something so simple. The humans themselves were unaware of the galactic attention they had drawn. They argued about whether tomato soup or chicken stew was better while repairing the solar panels, and no one noticed the small sensor blip indicating that a fleet was now focusing on their planet. Alice smiled quietly. It was precisely this combination of curiosity, casual courage, and lack of fear that made humans unique. They didn't fight wars for pride, they didn't seek to dominate. They simply did what needed doing, and somehow, against all odds, they often succeeded in surprising everyone around them. Alice took another sip of her tea and leaned back, letting the warmth settle her nerves. The Resolute wasn't a ship built for war. It was small, lightly armed, and mostly intended for exploration and support. And yet, if anyone underestimated the humans aboard it, they were in for a shock. Every human on that outpost, every human on that ship, had a spark of ingenuity and fearlessness that no alien could predict. And that spark was exactly what the council below feared. On the council station, alarms began to ring softly, warning of rising threat levels. Each alien member whispered among themselves, their voices carrying a tone of concern. "They may be dangerous," one said. Another replied, "Dangerous? They are planting vegetables." But still, the older, wiser leader remained silent, watching the humans' every move. There was a quiet understanding among the council that humans could never be fully understood. The ordinary actions, the casual bravery, and the unpredictable nature of humans made them wild cards in a galaxy that thrived on order and predictability. Alice glanced at Tom again. "Do you think they know we're being watched?" she asked quietly. Tom shrugged. "Probably not. And if they do, they probably don't care." That was humans in a nutshell. They faced danger, attention, or misunderstanding not with panic, but with curiosity and calm confidence. They didn't fight because they wanted to, but if necessary they could turn the simplest tools and actions into remarkable solutions. And even from this distance, Alice could feel that the aliens were making a critical mistake. They were taking humans too seriously, or perhaps not seriously enough. The day went on and the humans continued their work. Mia adjusted a solar panel, Ben repaired a generator, and others tended to the gardens and minor repairs of the outpost. The aliens continued to monitor, increasingly confused by what they saw. Their threat levels climbed in response to actions that were completely normal, completely mundane. The council, unable to reconcile logic with observation, finally raised the alert to orange, a level reserved for potential threats that needed close attention. Alice smiled faintly as she watched the sensors. The humans below didn't know they had caused alarm in 1,000 worlds. They didn't care. And in that simple, fearless approach to life there was power. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing a human could do was simply act like a human. Drink tea, fix a panel, water some plants, and unknowingly change the galaxy's perception of them entirely. As night fell on the small planet, the humans lit small fires for warmth and cooking, their laughter carrying faintly through the air. The council continued to argue, their pale blue faces tense with worry. Alice leaned back in her chair once more, watching, thinking, and sipping her tea. If the aliens only knew that all of this, watering plants, fixing panels, laughing at silly arguments, was exactly what made humans remarkable, they might reconsider how dangerous the species really was. Alice's thoughts wandered to the future, to the missions ahead, and to the curious, chaotic, fearless humans she commanded. She knew the galaxy would eventually understand one thing. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and impossible to fully control. And sometimes all it took was a small, ordinary action to make the galaxy raise its threat level. Mia had always loved exploring. Even on Glenrock, a quiet and rocky planet on the edge of human-colonized space, she could not resist wandering beyond the usual paths. The planet was simple, rolling hills of gray rock, a few scattered trees that clung stubbornly to the soil, and strange, soft glowing moss that sometimes lit the night in a gentle blue hue. It was the kind of place where humans could find calm or adventure, depending on their mood. Today Mia was in an adventurous mood. She walked carefully along a ridge, her boots crunching against the rough stone. Her hair, tied back in a practical braid, swayed as she leaned forward to inspect a strange shimmer on the ground. The sensors she carried registered an energy signature, weak but unusual. Mia crouched, brushing the dust away with her fingers. Beneath it, half buried in the soil, was a small artifact. It was not very large, maybe the size of her forearm, but it pulsed with a soft golden light. Its surface was smooth, with strange lines and symbols that glowed faintly. She had never seen anything like it. Mia's heart raced with excitement. She called out to Ben, who was working nearby repairing a communications relay. "Ben, you need to see this," she shouted. Ben jogged over, wiping grease off his hands on a rag. His brown hair was messy and a streak of dirt ran down his cheek. When he reached her, he knelt and examined the artifact. "Well," he said slowly, scratching his chin, "that is definitely not part of the usual equipment. Where did it come from?" Mia shrugged. "I don't know. It wasn't here yesterday, at least I don't think so. And the readings are strange. Almost alive." She tapped the glowing lines lightly, and the artifact responded with a small pulse, like it had noticed her touch. Ben's eyes sparkled. He was always the one to take risks, the one who could see possibilities where others saw only problems. He straightened, grinned, and said casually, "Hold my beer." Mia stared at him. "Hold your beer? What are you?" Before she could finish, Ben was already kneeling over the artifact, tools in hand, adjusting wires, pressing buttons, and connecting it to a small portable energy scanner. He hummed to himself as he worked, a tune from old Earth that sounded completely out of place on the rocky hills of Glenrock. Mia watched, a mix of fear and excitement twisting in her stomach. This was exactly the sort of reckless curiosity that made humans, humans. The artifact began to hum more loudly, a gentle vibration running through the air. The glow brightened, flickering in rhythm with Ben's tinkering. Sparks flew briefly from the tool he held, but the artifact remained intact. Mia held her breath, her mind racing with both wonder and worry. "Be careful," she called, but Ben only waved a hand. "Relax. I've got this." Far above them, the alien sensors were already reacting. On a patrol ship orbiting Glenrock, the crew of the alien vessel adjusted their instruments rapidly, trying to understand what they were seeing. A glowing object, small and seemingly inert, had suddenly come alive with energy. And it was humans, just two, fiddling with it casually as if it were no more than a broken radio. To the aliens this was terrifying. These humans did not act like any species they had ever encountered. "Commander," one of the alien officers said, its voice high and tense, "the humans are touching the artifact. It is activating." The commander's many eyes blinked rapidly, trying to comprehend. Activate? Oh, they are only two beings. They should not even have knowledge of the artifact's mechanisms. Are they attempting to weaponize it? They might be, another officer said. Its tentacles trembled. Or they might be doing nothing. I cannot tell. But the readings, the energy, it is unstable. Below, Mia and Ben were blissfully unaware of the panic they were causing. The artifact's glow had grown steady now, a soft golden pulse that seemed almost alive. Mia reached forward tentatively and touched it again. This time, a wave of warmth spread through her fingers. The symbols on the surface shifted slightly as if responding to her touch. Ben glanced at her, eyes wide. It's alive in some way. Or maybe it's thinking. Or sensing. I don't know. But it's amazing. Mia laughed softly, the sound carried by the wind. Amazing, yes. Dangerous, maybe. But not if we're careful. She glanced at Ben, who shrugged, unconcerned. Careful is relative, he said. This thing is probably harmless. Probably. From orbit, the alien sensors were unable to interpret the word probably. Their own systems registered sudden spikes in energy. Panels flashed red, alarms began to sound, and the commanding officers reacted instantly. Raise the threat level. Raise it to maximum. We cannot risk letting humans control this artifact. On Glenrock, the humans had no idea that their curiosity had caused an interstellar panic. Mia tilted her head, studying the artifact. Ben, do you think it came from this planet? She asked. Ben shook his head. No. This looks ancient, like someone, or something, brought it here a long time ago. Maybe thousands of years. Or more. And we just stumbled on it. Mia looked around. The hills were quiet, the sky a pale orange from the setting sun. The artifact's glow illuminated their faces, reflecting in their eyes. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ben laughed softly, a little nervously. Yeah, beautiful and probably dangerous. He glanced at the scanner. The readings were off the charts. If anyone else saw this, anyone who isn't human, they'd freak out. And they had. In distant star systems, alarms blared, fleets began moving and councils debated. Who were these humans? How could they touch an alien artifact and remain calm? And most importantly, how could something so small cause such an enormous effect across the galaxy? Back on Glenrock, Mia placed her hand gently on the artifact, feeling its warmth. We should take it back to the ship just in case, she said. Ben hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, in case, just in case is needed. He carefully picked up the artifact and held it like it was a delicate animal. Neither spoke for a moment, just standing there watching it glow. Above them, alien fleets continued to scramble. The humans' casual bravery and ignorance of danger had created chaos. The galaxy had no idea that the humans were not trying to control, conquer, or destroy. They were simply curious. They were fearless in the way humans always were, turning ordinary acts into extraordinary events. Alice, back on the Resolute, had been following the energy spike. She raised an eyebrow and muttered to herself, well, looks like Ben and Mia have done it again. She poured herself a cup of tea, taking a slow sip, knowing exactly what would happen next. The galaxy would panic, fleets would scramble, alarms would ring, and humans would simply keep being humans. And as the sun set over Glenrock, casting long shadows across the rocky hills, the artifact pulsed gently in Ben's hands, the soft golden light reflecting off their faces. The humans smiled. They did not understand the chaos they had caused. They were not worried. They were simply curious. Above them, the aliens had officially raised the threat level. Their communications channels were buzzing with alarm. They are dangerous, one officer finally admitted. But not like anything we have seen before. They do not fight like us. They do not fear like us. And yet, they move forward unafraid and they survive. We must prepare. The alarm lights on the bridge of the Resolute blinked softly, a gentle reminder that the galaxy was not as calm as it had been just yesterday. Captain Alice leaned back in her chair, taking a long sip of tea. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was comforting, though her eyes flicked occasionally to the sensors. There were many small blips moving across the star charts, some familiar, some not. Alice knew what they were before the computer even finished highlighting them: alien fleets. Not just one or two ships, but fleets mobilizing across multiple sectors. The humans on her ship had done something ordinary, something curious, and now the galaxy was reacting in an extraordinary way. Alice's fingers drummed lightly on the arm of her chair. "Looks like we have company," she said softly, mostly to herself. Behind her, the crew continued their usual routines, unaware of the growing chaos in distant star systems. Lieutenant Tom was checking the ship's navigation system, muttering under his breath about energy levels and course corrections. Engineer Ben was tinkering with one of the smaller drones, adjusting wiring that looked like it belonged in a junkyard but somehow worked perfectly. And Mia was carefully reviewing sensor readings from Glenrock, the glow of the recently discovered artifact still appearing on her display. The humans on the Resolute moved with a calm, chaotic energy. There were no rigid schedules, no drills that resembled alien military routines. Yet somehow they were efficient. Tools were passed from one hand to another, drones were repaired and tested on the fly, and computers hummed softly as crew members typed in commands, adjusting programs no one else would understand. Alice watched them with a small smile. Humans were unpredictable, but that unpredictability was their strength. Aliens could plan fleets of thousands of ships, but they could not plan for humans because humans did not always follow patterns, rules, or expectations. As the fleets moved closer to known human systems, the aliens were confused. Orders were given in rapid sequences, screens lit up with data, and alarms rang in every command center. "They are preparing to engage," one officer shouted on a distant Kurath warship. "No, they are moving randomly," another replied. "Their movements make no sense. Their actions are chaotic." On a Krellin cruiser, a commander tapped his clawed fingers against the metal railing of the bridge. "It is not possible. They have no formation, no strategy, no visible coordination. How are they even alive out there?" The ships continued to move, each one cautiously, as if the humans might do something completely unexpected, which they would. Back on the Resolute, Alice watched as Ben guided a small drone through a test circuit. The tiny machine zipped between obstacles, flipping and spinning in ways that would have destroyed any alien craft of similar size. "There," Ben said proudly, "good as new." He handed it to Mia, who laughed and sent it floating through the corridor of the ship. The drone bounced gently off walls, emitting a cheerful beep each time. "Tom," Alice said, pointing at the sensors, "how far are those fleets now?" Tom glanced up from the console, frowning slightly. "Still a few hours out, but they're moving fast. I've never seen so many ships mobilized so quickly for a small sector like ours." Alice nodded slowly, not worried. Humans did not panic. They did not hesitate. And somehow that gave them an advantage no alien fleet could understand. Humans trained and tinkered in their usual chaotic way. In the training room, Jack was practicing with one of the ship's old simulators, flipping levers and pressing buttons with abandon. The program would have failed with anyone else, but Jack's improvisation turned it into an effective exercise. Ella worked on recalibrating the weapons system, testing energy output in a way that looked reckless but actually optimized performance. Mia and Ben were back at the drone bay, adjusting small machines and rerouting energy channels. Each action was small and insignificant on its own, but together they created something remarkable. Alice leaned back and studied them, thinking about the alien fleets approaching. Most species, when faced with the unknown, would immediately form ranks, issue commands, and act with precision. Humans, on the other hand, adapted instinctively. They improvised. They solved problems without thinking about whether it was allowed or logical. The aliens could see this in their sensors. They could measure energy outputs, weapon readiness, and drone activity, but they could not predict human behavior. That uncertainty was terrifying. Far across the galaxy, alien councils were debating strategy. "They are dangerous," one Kurath elder hissed, his voice trembling. "Two beings on a small ship, tinkering with artifacts and drones, and yet our sensors indicate they can potentially handle our entire fleet." Another alien clicked its mandibles, confused. "It cannot be. They are small, primitive. How can two humans cause this much disruption?" The elder turned sharply. "Because they are human. They do not obey logic as we understand it. They adapt. They improvise. And they are fearless." Back on the Resolute, Alice rose from her chair and walked slowly toward the drone bay. She passed her crew, each absorbed in their work. "Remember," she said quietly, "do what humans do best. Keep calm, stay curious, and don't overthink it." Ben looked up, grinning. "That's easy for us." Mia laughed. Especially when the galaxy is panicking over something so small. Alice smiled, feeling a surge of pride. These humans were remarkable. They were ordinary in the way they lived, yet extraordinary in the way they faced danger. The first blips of alien ships appeared on the outer sensors. Hundreds, then thousands, moving with precision and deadly intent. Alice's eyes narrowed slightly. "Looks like the galaxy finally noticed us," she said. Tom's fingers flew across the controls, adjusting shields and navigation paths. "They're coming fast," he said. "Do we have a plan?" Alice shook her head slowly. "Plan? Not really. But we have humans." And that, she knew, was better than any plan. Humans were not disciplined in the alien sense, but they were inventive. A random adjustment to a drone circuitry could double its efficiency. A casual tweak to a shield system could make it nearly impenetrable. And when humans worked together, even without strict rules, they produced results that were unpredictable, effective, and sometimes astonishing. Alice watched as her crew continued their work, thinking, this is why humans are underestimated. This is why the galaxy always panics when we move. On the alien fleets, panic was spreading. Fleet commanders shouted orders, but every strategy was challenged by sensors showing humans adapting in real time. "They are improvising," one Krellin officer said. "Every movement we predict is countered by something unexpected. They are clever." The word seemed to confuse everyone around him. Clever? These small, unarmed beings? Yet the data was clear. Humans were not only surviving, they were thriving in ways the aliens could not calculate. Back on the ship, Ben finally finished his work on the last drone. It hovered perfectly in place, scanning the ship and relaying data to the main computer. Mia smiled. "Ready for anything," she said. Jack leaned back from the simulator, breathing heavily but grinning. "Anything the galaxy throws at us." Ella nodded, still adjusting the energy output of the weapon systems. "And I mean anything." Alice watched them for a moment longer, feeling a sense of calm. Humans did not panic. They did not overthink. They simply acted, and that action, no matter how chaotic it appeared, made them strong. The alien fleets were closing in, their weapon systems charging, their communications filled with warnings and orders. And still, the humans aboard the Resolute went about their tasks as if it were just another day. Alice sipped her tea again, letting the warmth spread through her. "Let them come," she murmured. "We'll show them what humans do best." Somewhere far away, in command centers filled with panic and confusion, alien leaders whispered to each other. "We cannot predict them," one said. "We cannot fight them with traditional tactics." Another clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "We can only watch, and hope they do not realize their own power." On the Resolute, the humans continued. They repaired, tested, tinkered, and trained. They laughed, joked, and focused on their tasks. And in that calm, chaotic energy, they held the power the galaxy feared most: unpredictability. Alice smiled, standing at the front of the bridge, looking at the approaching fleets. "This is going to be interesting," she said. And it would be. The humans of the Resolute were about to show the galaxy that fearlessness, curiosity, and chaos could be more powerful than fleets of warships, weapons, and strategy combined. The sensors on the bridge of the Resolute started blinking rapidly, a sharp red warning that could not be ignored. Captain Alice leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as the screen updated with multiple incoming blips. Alien warships were approaching, large, dark, and menacing, their energy signatures filling the space around Glen Rock like a shadow over the stars. The fleets had finally arrived. They were not small scout ships or observation drones. They were full battle fleets, mobilized with precision and intent. The galaxy had noticed the humans at last. Ella, the weapons officer, let out a long, low whistle. "They came for us," she said, her voice calm but tinged with awe. The rest of the crew looked at the sensors, then at each other. No one panicked. That was humans for you. Panic was not a standard response, even when facing dozens of warships bristling with weapons that could destroy their small ship in seconds. They looked ordinary, calm, and prepared in their own chaotic way. Alice smiled faintly. "Well," she said, "then let's show them what humans do best." The humans on the ship immediately went into action, but not in the way any alien commander expected. There were no formal formations, no precise marching orders, and no strict protocols. Instead, they moved like a single organism, each person improvising within their own space. Ben darted to the drone bay, gathering small, outdated ships from storage. They were junk by alien standards, broken hulls, patched-up engines, and outdated energy cores, but to humans they were perfect tools. Mia helped reroute power from one system to another, giving the ships more mobility than their frames should allow. Jack ran simulations on the training deck, creating imaginary enemy attacks and testing how they could use the environment to their advantage. He punched in random commands, adjusted angles, and watched the results, sometimes laughing at the chaos. Ella monitored the incoming fleet on the sensors, tracking their weapon readiness and noting weaknesses that no one else would see. "They're trying to predict us," she said quietly, "but humans don't follow patterns." Alice nodded, leaning against the console. "Exactly. That's the point." The alien warships moved like predators closing in on prey, their weapons ready to fire. On their command decks, officers barked orders, expecting a normal response. "Engage," one yelled. "Target and destroy." Another pressed a series of buttons, activating energy weapons and scanning fields. They assumed the humans would run, surrender, or at least panic. They did not understand what humans could do when left to their own devices. From the junk ships, Ben launched a small fleet of drones and old craft. They flew erratically, weaving between the rocks and asteroids scattered across the area. The alien sensors were confused. Their calculations showed expected flight paths, and the humans ignored them completely. The drones zipped around unpredictably, changing direction at the last second, using gravity pulls from nearby asteroids to slingshot into unexpected positions. The alien weapons fired, but the small craft moved too quickly, their movements impossible to predict. Mia guided one of the patched-up ships manually, using a combination of sensors and instinct. "We can use the planet's gravity against them," she said. "If we time it right, they'll overshoot every attack." Ben grinned. "Exactly what I was thinking. Nothing fancy, just basic physics. They won't see it coming." Alice watched, impressed by the improvisation. No manual, no training program, and no protocol could teach this level of instinct and creativity. This was pure human ingenuity. The first alien energy beams hit the rocks around the Resolute, sending up clouds of debris. The crew laughed softly at the explosions. Not because they were reckless, but because they understood their environment and how to use it. Jack had predicted the impact points, adjusted the drones, and used the debris as temporary shields. Even the older junk ships, which had been ignored for years, became moving barriers, absorbing fire and protecting the main ship. Ella adjusted the main weapons targeting, not to attack the alien fleets directly, but to create small disruptions. Pulses of energy nudged the junk ships, sending them in slightly different trajectories, making the aliens think the humans had hundreds of perfectly coordinated vessels. It was a trick, a human trick. The aliens panicked slightly, adjusting their targeting, but the humans were already 2 steps ahead. Each action was simple on its own but combined into a pattern the aliens could not understand. On one of the alien command ships, an officer barked in frustration. "They are moving randomly. All predictions are failing. How can 2 humans control so much chaos?" Another officer adjusted sensors, trying to locate the main ship among the drones. "Impossible," it said. "They do not obey logic. They're clever." Clever was not a word they used often, especially not for what they considered small, primitive beings. But the readings were clear. Humans were turning the environment, old ships, and even gravity itself into weapons. Back on the Resolute, Alice kept her calm as the ship darted between asteroid fields. The crew moved with quiet precision, adjusting energy shields, rerouting power, and watching the sensors. Each human action seemed casual, but it was perfectly timed. A small beam fired from the alien fleet glanced off an asteroid and harmlessly exploded behind them. Ben smiled and whispered, "We're good." Mia nodded. "For now." The alien ships tried to coordinate their attack. They fired volleys of energy across the field, expecting the humans to follow a straight path, as any normal species would. But the humans twisted, turned, and slingshot around gravity wells, making each strike miss by miles. The junk ships, patched drones, and old cargo pods zipped through the chaos, confusing the alien targeting systems even further. Every small move was unpredictable, every reaction human. Alice leaned over the console, watching the results on the screens. "Humans never follow the rules," she said softly. "They make their own rules, and that is why they survive." The aliens were learning this lesson the hard way. Their fleet, designed to crush opponents with sheer numbers and firepower, was struggling against a small crew of humans with patched-up drones and clever tactics. Every time the aliens adjusted, the humans adapted instantly, exploiting even the smallest weakness in the attack patterns. Mia guided another old ship around a massive asteroid, using it as cover. "They'll never hit us if we keep moving," she said. Ben nodded. "And we're making them waste energy every time. Their weapons will overheat soon." On the bridge, Ella grinned, watching the energy readings spike and drop. "They don't understand humans," she said. "We're not fighting them the way they expect. We're using their own mistakes against them." The alien fleet commander grew more frustrated. "How can such small, insignificant beings survive against our entire armada? They are using physics, intuition, randomness. They are unpredictable." Across the galaxy, similar reports were coming from other alien fleets. Humans were causing chaos simply by being human, unpredictable, bold, and clever. Alice glanced at her crew, her pride quietly swelling. "This is why the galaxy fears humans," she said softly. She leaned back, letting the hum of the engines fill the bridge. The humans moved, adapted, and improvised with calm confidence. They did not panic. They did not hesitate. They used the tools around them, the environment, and even old junk to turn a desperate situation into a manageable one. The alien fleets continued to fire, adjusting their calculations, but every prediction was wrong. Every strategy failed. And still, the humans laughed softly, coordinated small adjustments, and guided their patched-up ships with skill. The battlefield became a dance of improvisation, speed, and instinct. Every move was small, simple, but together, it created chaos for the aliens and safety for the humans. By the time the first alien command ships realized what was happening, it was too late. Their fleets had wasted energy, miscalculated trajectories, and were now spread thin, unable to effectively engage the humans. On the bridge of the Resolute, Alice sipped her tea again, calm as ever. "Well," she said, "that was fun." The humans had survived. Not because they were stronger or better armed, but because they were clever, fearless, and unpredictable. They had taken old junk ships, gravity, and instinct and turned them into a system no alien fleet could understand. And the galaxy had just learned a very important lesson. Humans were dangerous not because of their weapons but because of how they thought, adapted, and acted without fear. The sun of Glenrock was setting, casting long shadows across the rocky hills. The alien fleets hovered on the horizon, confused, frustrated, and unsure what to do next. The humans on the Resolute repaired, adjusted, and laughed. Another ordinary day for them, another extraordinary lesson for the galaxy. The humans had survived again, and they had done it in their own chaotic, brilliant way. The Resolute floated in the silent expanse of space, its small hull surrounded by the scattered remains of asteroids and the faint glow of distant suns. The alien fleets were still hovering, unsure how to engage a crew that had already turned ordinary tools into deadly advantages. Captain Alice leaned over the main console, her eyes following every blip on the sensors, every movement of the enemy ships. She felt calm. The humans under her command were extraordinary, not because of their weapons or ships, but because of their creativity, their courage, and their ability to act without fear. Jack was hunched over a bank of old drones, his fingers moving quickly across the control panels. Each drone had once been a simple maintenance unit, used for carrying supplies or scanning areas on planets. To anyone else, they were useless, junk machines that could barely hover in gravity. But Jack was reprogramming them, adjusting flight patterns, energy output, and targeting protocols. He typed commands at a speed that seemed reckless to an observer, but every line of code had a purpose. The drones now moved in intricate patterns, weaving between the asteroids like a swarm of intelligent birds. Nearby, Lucy was at work on a supply ship. It had been a simple freighter, used for hauling food, water, and equipment between bases. To an alien observer, it was nothing more than a floating cargo container. But Lucy had other plans. She carefully rerouted energy from the propulsion system into the hull, strengthening its shielding. She positioned it between the Resolute and one of the larger enemy ships, turning it into a moving barrier. Each small adjustment she made allowed the Resolute to dodge incoming fire while the drones created chaos around the enemy fleet. Alice observed her crew quietly, sipping a cup of tea she had brought with her. "We don't start fights," she said softly, addressing no one in particular, "but we win them our way." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that only humans could understand. They did not attack without reason. They did not fight for glory. They simply used their intelligence, their creativity, and their courage to survive. And when survival required action, they did so in a way no one could predict. The alien fleets were learning this the hard way. Across multiple command decks, officers barked orders, expecting obedience, strategy, and discipline. Instead, they received chaos, unpredictability, and brilliance. Every maneuver the humans executed disrupted alien calculations. The reprogrammed drones darted between ships, creating false targets, blocking weapon lines, and confusing sensors. The supply ship moved with precise timing, absorbing blasts that would have destroyed the Resolute without even breaking a sweat. The humans were improvising, adapting, and thriving in ways no alien fleet had ever seen. Mia floated beside Alice on the bridge, watching the drones move in elegant, erratic patterns. "It's amazing," she whispered. "They can't even figure out what we're doing." Alice nodded. "That's humans. They can't predict us, and we don't need to be predictable. That's our advantage." Ben leaned over, adjusting the energy flow to the shields. "They'll keep firing until they run out of energy," he said. "And by then we'll be long gone, or they'll have learned their lesson." The alien commanders were panicking. "How can 24 humans control so much chaos?" a Kurath officer yelled, banging on a console. "Their drones, their ships, their movements, everything is unpredictable." Another clicked its mandibles nervously. "It is impossible. We cannot fight them the way we fight others. They are clever. They are fearless. And worst of all, they do not obey our expectations." Back on the Resolute, Jack released another set of drones, sending them to patrol a wider area and distract enemy sensors. Each drone moved independently, yet together they created a network that was far more efficient than the aliens could understand. Lucy adjusted the position of the supply ship slightly, nudging it into a new trajectory that would absorb another volley of energy blasts. Alice watched calmly, her mind already planning the next step. Humans never panicked, but they always adapted. Ella monitored the enemy weapon systems, noting which cannons had overheated, which targeting arrays were disrupted, and which ships were being forced into retreat by the drones and shields. "They're learning too late," she said softly. "The humans are already one step ahead." Alice nodded. "They never stop learning," she said. "That's the danger humans present. We don't fight like anyone else. We think, adapt, and survive." Mia smiled, watching a drone swoop between two alien ships, triggering a chain reaction that caused them to misalign their weapons. "It's like watching a game," she said. "Except we're winning." Jack laughed. "A game the aliens didn't even know they were playing." Ben shook his head, grinning. "And we're doing it with junk ships and old drones. No fancy weapons, no massive fleets, just humans being humans." The alien commanders realized the truth. These humans were not strong in the conventional sense. They were not armored, heavily armed, or numerous. And yet, they had turned a small ship and a few drones into a force the entire fleet could not predict, could not defeat easily. They were clever, fearless, and completely unpredictable. Every move humans made seemed small, simple, and insignificant. But when combined, these actions created a web of chaos that no alien tactics could penetrate. Alice watched the enemy ships move and adjusted the Resolute's course slightly, letting the gravity of a nearby asteroid pull them into a better position. The humans on board continued their work, ignoring fear, ignoring panic, and focusing on problem solving. It was not the weapons that made them strong, it was their minds. Humans could see possibilities where others saw limits. They could act when others hesitated. And they never gave up, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. Lucy adjusted the supply ship's shield again, redirecting energy to compensate for the weakening hull. "We'll hold them off," she said confidently. Jack nodded. "And if they try anything stupid, we'll improvise. That's the advantage humans have. We think in ways they don't expect." Alice smiled faintly, proud of her crew. "Exactly. We don't start wars, but when we're forced to fight, we win them in our way." Across the alien fleets, chaos spread. Ships that were supposed to operate as a coordinated unit were now firing randomly, missing targets and overheating their weapons. Sensors were jammed by drones and debris. Commanders yelled orders that could not be executed. And everywhere the humans adapted. Each small human action, reprogramming a drone, moving a ship slightly, adjusting energy output, turned the tide of battle in ways no alien had imagined. Ben floated near the console, adjusting power levels to the shields and engines. "They'll have to retreat soon," he said. "They're wasting energy chasing things that aren't even threats." Ella nodded. "They're learning too late that humans are different. We don't fight like they expect. We survive like no one expects." Alice watched the stars outside the window, thinking of Glenrock, the artifact, and how humans had managed to turn curiosity and creativity into strength time and again. Mia leaned against the console, smiling. "It's amazing to watch them struggle. They think they're powerful, but they can't handle our chaos." Jack laughed, sending a small drone into the path of an alien targeting beam just to see what would happen. "Exactly," he said. "And every time they adjust, we've already moved." Lucy nodded, steadying the supply ship. "We're like shadows they can't catch. And that's exactly how humans survive." Alice raised her cup of tea and took a quiet sip, watching her crew at work. These humans were small, unarmed in the traditional sense, and yet they were unstoppable in their own way. Clever, fearless, unpredictable. That combination had already saved them once and would save them again. The aliens might have numbers, weapons, and technology, but humans had something the galaxy could never calculate: instinct, courage, and imagination. As the battle slowly drew on, the alien fleets began to reconsider their strategy. Their attacks were wasted, their ships misaligned, and their energy reserves diminishing. Commanders whispered in disbelief. "They are impossible," one said. "They are not just surviving. They are winning without even trying the way we understand." Another clicked its mandibles, frustrated. "We cannot fight them like this. We have no idea what they will do next." On the Resolute, Jack, Lucy, Mia, Ben, Ella, and the rest of the crew continued their work, calm, focused, and confident. They were humans after all. Humans survived. Humans adapted. Humans won. Alice watched them with pride and a small smile. "This is why the galaxy fears humans," she said quietly. And it was true. For the aliens, the lesson was clear. Humans were clever, fearless, and completely unpredictable. They could not be understood, controlled, or defeated easily. And as long as humans were around, the galaxy would always have to raise its threat level, even for something as small as a few drones and a patched-up supply ship. The stars outside gleamed faintly, the battle still ongoing but slowly tipping in favor of the humans. The Resolute continued its path, weaving between asteroids, while the aliens struggled to keep up. And in that quiet chaos, the humans thrived, exactly as they always had, exactly as they always would. The council chamber, high above a dim star, was unusually quiet. Normally, debates here were loud, sharp, and full of harsh arguments that lasted hours. Today, however, the alien leaders were stunned. They sat in their chairs, or floated, in the case of some species, with eyes wide and tentacles twitching. Across the galaxy, reports were coming in from every fleet, every outpost, and every command station. The humans had done the impossible. They had survived, adapted, and outmaneuvered entire fleets using nothing more than old drones, patched-up supply ships, instinct, and creativity. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Alice leaned back in her chair and sipped her tea slowly. The warm liquid slid down her throat as she observed her crew. Each human was calmly going about their work, repairing minor damage, checking systems, or adjusting energy flows. No one was celebrating loudly. No one was panicking. They were humans, and this was just another day in their lives. A day that had almost accidentally caused interstellar panic. Alice let the cup rest in her hands for a moment, a quiet grin spreading across her face. The galaxy had underestimated humans once again. The council had finally reached a decision. After hours of chaotic debate, calculations, and simulations, the alien leaders agreed to a ceasefire. They did not like it. They did not understand it. But they had no other option. Every attack they had launched had failed, wasted energy, or even caused damage to their own ships because of the humans' unpredictability. One council member, a tall, blue-skinned creature with 6 eyes, tapped its claws against the armrest. "We cannot fight them in the way we fight others. Their methods are beyond comprehension," it said quietly. Another added, "They are not only surviving, they are thriving. They do not obey logic or fear. We must accept a ceasefire." Alice watched the ships across the sensors, noting the gradual withdrawal of the alien fleets. Their ships moved away cautiously, scanning and recalculating, still unsure of what they had just faced. "Well," she said softly, turning to her crew, "that went better than expected." Jack, who had been adjusting a drone, looked up with a grin. "Better than expected is an understatement," he said. "They tried everything and we just kept doing what humans do." Lucy laughed quietly, still repositioning the supply ship shields to make sure they didn't drift too close to debris. "And we didn't even have to break a sweat," she said. On the alien fleets, confusion reigned. Fleet commanders huddled together, trying to understand what had just happened. Their sensors had tracked every movement of the humans. They had expected panic, fear, or surrender. Instead, the humans had improvised at every step, used the environment as weapons, and adapted faster than any calculation could predict. "It's impossible," a Krellin officer muttered, claws tapping nervously on a console. 24 humans on a small ship, and yet our fleets have failed to contain them. "How?" Another officer, older and calmer, replied, "Because humans are humans. They are clever, fearless, and completely unpredictable. Every time they act, they change the game." Alice stood and walked slowly across the bridge, watching her crew move in calm, quiet efficiency. She paused by Ella, who was still monitoring the residual energy spikes from the alien weapons. Good work, Alice said simply. Ella smiled. We didn't even have to overthink it, she replied. We just did what came naturally. Alice nodded. That was humans in a nutshell. They did not panic, they did not hesitate, and they did not act in predictable ways. They solved problems with creativity, courage, and instinct, qualities no alien fleet could anticipate or counter. Mia floated by the main console, reviewing sensor data from the outer fleets. They're retreating, she said. Slowly, cautiously, probably still afraid we'll do something unexpected. Alice laughed softly. That's the point, she said. Humans didn't need to show brute strength or overwhelming firepower. Their unpredictability, cleverness, and fearlessness were enough to make the galaxy respect and fear them. Ben, who had been quietly recalibrating the shields and drones, grinned. Do you think they'll ever understand humans? He asked. Alice shook her head slowly. Not completely, she said. And that's fine. They don't need to. All they need to know is that humans are dangerous when underestimated. Back in the council chamber, the alien leaders continued to argue quietly among themselves. Some admitted reluctantly that humans were unlike any species they had faced. Others complained that they had wasted fleets, energy, and resources on beings that had barely fought in a conventional sense. The consensus was clear even if no one wanted to admit it. Humans were exceptional. Small, unassuming, and often chaotic, yet terrifyingly clever and capable of survival beyond imagination. On the bridge of the Resolute, Alice finally placed her cup of tea back on the console. She turned to her crew who were still adjusting drones, checking shields, and tidying minor damage. Everyone did well, she said. Not because of weapons or numbers but because you acted like humans. Curious, fearless, and unpredictable. Jack laughed. That's us all right, he said. Mia grinned. And apparently the galaxy still doesn't understand us. Alice chuckled softly. They never will. And that's our advantage. Outside the Resolute, the alien fleets continued to drift away, still scanning and analyzing, still unsure of what they had witnessed. Their weapons were ready, their ships intact, but their strategies were failing. Every human move had disrupted calculations, caused misfires, or created opportunities the aliens could not predict. Even the simplest actions like moving a patched-up drone or adjusting a shield had ripple effects that the alien fleets could not control. Humans had won without fighting in the way others expected. Alice looked out at the stars, thinking about the galaxy beyond. The humans had survived Glenrock, outmaneuvered alien fleets, and forced an interstellar ceasefire without firing a single major weapon at the enemy. It was proof, she thought, that humans were something extraordinary. Cleverness, adaptability, fearlessness. These were not traits that could be measured with sensors or analyzed by alien technology. They were human traits, and they made a difference in every impossible situation. She turned to her crew and smiled. Remember this, she said softly. Every time humans say, "Hold my beer," the galaxy raises the threat level. The crew laughed quietly, knowing exactly what she meant. It was a simple phrase, a joke, and a challenge all at once. It meant that humans were about to do something extraordinary, unpredictable, and likely dangerous whether anyone else liked it or not. The council, meanwhile, continued to debate the implications of the humans' actions. Some aliens suggested building more powerful weapons, sending more fleets, or attempting to study the humans in controlled conditions. Others, however, argued that humans were too unpredictable to contain. We cannot fight them the way we fight others, a Karath elder said. We cannot calculate their moves. And yet, they survive, adapt, and sometimes even thrive. They are dangerous in ways we cannot control. Alice took another sip of her tea, feeling the warmth spread and calm her. The humans on the Resolute were busy but not stressed. They repaired systems, adjusted drones, and laughed quietly at minor mishaps. They did not celebrate loudly, but they knew they had done something incredible. They had survived against overwhelming odds, outsmarted the galaxy's fleets, and shown that humans were not just clever. They were fearless, resourceful, and completely unpredictable. Ben glanced at the sensors, smiling. So, what do we do now? He asked. Alice shrugged. We do what humans do best, she said. We explore, we adapt, and we stay curious. The galaxy will figure out the rest on its own. Jack laughed. Sounds simple enough. Mia nodded. Simple, yes. But probably dangerous for anyone watching us. Alice smiled, her eyes twinkling. That was the truth of it. Humans always seemed ordinary. They seemed small, unarmed, and unprepared. But every time they acted, they changed the rules and the galaxy noticed, often too late. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, quiet and serene. The The alien fleets were retreating, still puzzled, still wary, still calculating how they might confront humans in the future. The humans, on the other hand, continued their small, deliberate actions aboard the Resolute. They repaired, tinkered, laughed, and planned for their next adventure. No one feared them openly, but everyone knew, somewhere deep in the calculations and reports, that humans were a force unlike any other in the galaxy. Alice leaned back in her chair, taking a final sip of tea. She glanced at her crew and then at the stars. The galaxy had been warned. The humans had shown what they could do, and in their usual calm, curious, fearless way, they had survived another impossible challenge. And every time humans said, even casually, "Hold my beer," the galaxy would know to pay attention. Because humans, small, clever, and unafraid, always found a way to win, even when no one expected it.